the Alpha King found his missing Luna, lying beside 12 pups she had kept alive all night. A quiet wind stirred the leaves, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and earth. Somewhere deep in the distance, a wolf's howl rose and fell, lonely and haunting. But it was not just any howl. It was the Alpha King's calling for the one soul he feared he might have lost forever. He moved through the shadows like a shadow himself, his broad shoulders cutting through the mist, eyes sharp and searching. Each step was careful yet urgent, for he knew the forest was not forgiving. Every twisted branch, every dark hollow could conceal danger, yet none of that mattered to him now. There was only her, his Luna, and the fear that she might be gone for good. Days had passed since she disappeared. Rumors had spread through the kingdom. Some whispered that she had been taken by a rival clan. Others said the cursed valley had claimed her life. The Alpha King refused to believe either. She had survived every challenge before. She was stronger than any danger the world could throw at her. Still, each passing hour gnawed at him, leaving his heart raw and restless. The forest grew darker as he moved deeper. Mist rose from the earth, curling around his boots, softening his footsteps. His senses were alert. Every rustle made him pause, every faint cry made him strain his ears. Then faint but unmistakable came the sound that made his heart leap, a soft whimper almost like a child's cry. He froze. The sound was near, yet he could not see its source. The whimper came again, more urgent this time, carried on the cold wind. He followed it instinctively, pushing through the thick undergrowth, feeling the pull of something unseen yet familiar. It was her. He knew it. The valley opened before him suddenly, a hollow shaped like a bowl, surrounded by jagged rocks that seemed to rise like ancient guardians. Shadows clung to the edges, moving unnaturally as if the land itself was alive. And there in the center a soft glow flickered, like a tiny flame struggling against the cold. He slowed, careful not to startle whatever or whoever he would find. The light grew clearer, revealing her, lying on the ground, her hair damp with dew and her clothes torn and worn. Around her 12 small forms stirred, tiny and trembling, their soft whimpers mixing with hers. His heart froze. 12 pups alive. Against all odds she had kept them alive through the night, through the cold and the shadows that stalked the valley. She had survived, and so had they. "Luna," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. She stirred at the sound, lifting her head slowly. Her eyes, wide and tired, met his. Relief, exhaustion, and something unspoken passed between them. She was alive. She was here. But she did not speak. Instead, she lifted one trembling pup to her chest, cradling it carefully. Her gaze flicked to the others, ensuring they were safe, warm, and breathing. He saw the faint tremor in her hands, the way her shoulders sagged under the weight of her exhaustion. She had fought so hard, endured so much, and she had done it alone. He stepped closer, the mist curling around him like a cloak. Why did you come here?" he asked, his voice a mixture of awe and anger. "You should not have been alone." Her lips quivered, but she did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked at the pups, one by one, whispering soft, protective words. Then finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had to. They needed me. I could not let anything happen to them." He knelt beside her, his massive form casting a shadow over the tiny circle of life. He wanted to embrace her, to pull her close and promise that she would never be alone again. Yet he held back, sensing the depth of her pride and determination. She had survived, yes, but she had survived on her own terms. "You should have told me," he said softly, though his heart ached. "I would have come no matter the danger." "I knew you would," she replied, her voice steady despite her trembling. "But I had to do this myself. They are mine and I am theirs. I could not risk you getting caught in the valley's magic." He felt a sharp pang at her words. She had faced unknown dangers, fought through shadows, and borne the night alone, to protect him from risk as much as herself. His chest tightened with admiration and guilt. How many times had he underestimated her strength? How many times had he relied on his own power, forgetting that hers was just as fierce, just as unyielding? He reached out, placing a careful hand on her shoulder. She did not flinch, though her body was tense. The connection between them was electric, yet unspoken, a bond forged in trials, tempered in absence, and now tested in reunion. "Come with me," he said, his voice low, commanding yet gentle. "We need to leave this place. You and the pups both." She hesitated, glancing at the small form she had protected through the long night. "I cannot, not yet. They need warmth. I cannot leave them here." His eyes softened. "Then let me help, together." Her gaze met his, and in that moment the forest seemed to hold its breath. Shadows twisted in the distance, moved by unseen forces, and the wind whispered secrets only the night could carry. She nodded, allowing him to lift a pup gently into his arms. Relief washed over her, mingled with something deeper, trust, and perhaps the faintest spark of love that had never truly faded. Together, they gathered the 12 pups, their movements careful and coordinated. He marveled at her strength, at her ability to endure what he could barely imagine. And she, in turn, felt the weight of his presence, the power, the protection, the unwavering determination that had defined him as her alpha. Yet now it was not fear or authority she saw in him, but something tender, something that promised redemption for both of them. The valley seemed to resist their departure. Shadows shifted, whispering in voices like dry leaves, curling around the edges of the rocks, testing their resolve. But together the Alpha and his Luna moved forward, step by careful step, the pups cradled between them. Each footfall was a silent defiance against the darkness, a vow that they would survive, that they would endure, and that nothing, not prophecy, not curse, not shadow, could tear them apart. As they neared the edge of the valley, a sudden gust of wind carried a cry unlike any they had heard before, a sound that was not wolf, not human, but something ancient, something hungry for life. The pup stirred, ears twitching, and the Luna froze, a shiver running through her body. She had faced the night alone, and now she realized that the valley's magic was not finished with them yet. The Alpha tightened his grip on her hand, drawing her closer, his eyes scanning the shifting darkness. "Whatever comes," he said, voice firm and steady, "we face it together, always." For the first time since the night began, she allowed herself a small, weary smile. Her heart, exhausted yet alive, acknowledged the bond that had never truly broken, the tether that tied her to him and him to her. The 12 pups nestled against them, safe for the moment, but the shadows lingered, whispering that danger still waited. And in that whispered warning, the forest seemed to breathe around them, alive with the promise that the story was far from over. The Alpha King and his Luna had been reunited, but the night's trials had only just begun. The wind carried faint, frantic cries farther into the darkness, a reminder that the valley had its secrets yet to reveal. And as they stepped forward, leaving the flickering light behind, the Alpha King knew one truth above all others: he would not lose her again. Not now, not ever. But the forest had other plans, and the shadowed valley watched, waiting, patient as death itself. The valley seemed alive, breathing in the cold air as though it resented their presence. Even as the first rays of dawn touched the jagged rocks, the shadows did not fade. They clung to corners and crevices, twisting unnaturally, watching. And in the center of it all, the Luna sat, huddled over the 12 tiny pups. They were fragile, shivering with cold, and their soft whimpers filled the quiet dawn. She had spent the long, cruel night keeping them alive, feeding them what little she had, keeping their tiny bodies warm against the chill, whispering soft words of comfort when the dark seemed too heavy to bear. Every breath she took was measured, every movement careful. She could not afford a single mistake. Her body ached, hunger gnawed at her stomach, and exhaustion pressed down on her like a stone, but she could not allow herself to collapse, not while her pups needed her, not while the forest's shadows lurked, hungry and waiting. She looked down at them, their tiny eyes barely open, fragile and new in a world that already seemed so harsh. She had carried them through the darkness, one by one, keeping them alive with nothing but determination and the faint magic that pulsed through her veins, an inheritance from her own lineage. It was old, quiet power enough to shield them, enough to keep the shadows at bay. Yet even as she protected them, her heart ached with guilt. She had left her Alpha King behind, venturing into this cursed valley alone. She had run because she feared she might put him in danger, feared the prophecy that spoke of trials and loss. And now, as she looked at the pups nestled around her, she wondered if her choices had been right. Could she have survived this night if he had been at her side? Or would his presence have drawn the darkness to them faster? The wind whispered through the rocks, carrying a faint, chilling voice that made her shiver. It was the valley itself, alive and hungry, testing her resolve. You cannot hide forever, it seemed to say, twisting the shadows around her like living fingers. But she would not yield. Not tonight. She was their mother, their protector, and she would endure whatever came. Suddenly, the silence broke with the distant, unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps. Her heart leapt, and for a moment hope flared in her chest. She knew that sound. It was powerful, familiar, and filled her with both relief and fear. The Alpha King had arrived. Her body tensed as she watched him step into the clearing, moving like a shadow yet radiating strength. His eyes, sharp and searching, scanned the valley until they found her. Relief, fury, and longing flickered in his gaze. She could see it all, his need to protect her, his anger at her for leaving, and the ache of hours spent fearing she might never return. He slowed as he approached, careful, aware of the delicate creatures at her side. "Luna," he said, his voice low and filled with emotion, "you are alive." "Yes," she replied, her voice trembling but firm. "And so are they." She gestured to the 12 pups, each one nestled against her or one another, safe for now. The king knelt beside her, his eyes softening as he took in the small, fragile forms. "How did you manage this alone?" he asked, voice full of awe. "The valley, it is cruel, it should have taken you." She shook her head, refusing to let weakness show. "I had to, they needed me. I could not risk you coming here, not knowing the valley's traps. I could not." Her words faltered as she touched one tiny head, stroking the soft fur. He reached out, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You should not have done this alone," he said softly. "I would have come for you, I would have protected you." "I know," she whispered, looking into his eyes, "but I needed to do it myself. I had to prove that I could survive, that I could protect them." His chest tightened. She had carried the weight of the night, faced fear, hunger, and exhaustion, and yet she had not faltered. Her strength humbled him, filled him with admiration, and a deeper longing he could barely control. He had always been strong, feared by many, yet here, in the face of her courage, he felt small. "We should leave," he said, gently lifting a pup into his arms. "The valley's shadows still linger. They will not let us go easily." She nodded, but her gaze remained on the others. "I cannot leave them all," she said, voice firm. "I need to make sure they are safe. I cannot risk losing even one." He smiled faintly, understanding her determination. "Then let me help you," he said. "Together we can carry them. You do not have to do this alone." For a long moment she hesitated, pride and fear warring within her. Then she nodded, allowing him to help her gather the 12 pups. Their movements were careful, deliberate, as if the smallest mistake could summon the valley's wrath. As they prepared to leave, a cold wind swept through the clearing, and the shadows stirred more aggressively. They seemed almost alive, moving with intent, circling the edges of the rocks, whispering threats in voices only the valley could produce. The pups whined softly, sensing the danger, and the Luna's heart clenched. She had protected them through the night, but the valley was not finished yet. The Alpha King's grip tightened on her hand, and she felt the strength radiating from him, steady and unwavering. "Whatever comes," he said, voice low and full of promise, "we face it together, always." she nodded, a small, tired smile brushing her lips. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself a moment of relief, knowing that, for now, she was not alone. The bond between them, tested by separation and danger, had not broken. It had grown stronger, tempered by fear and longing, and now, in this fragile dawn, it pulsed with a quiet, unspoken promise. Together, they began to move, the 12 pups cradled carefully between them. Every step was measured, every movement cautious, as the valley seemed to resist their departure. Shadows twisted in unnatural shapes, brushing at their legs, curling around rocks, testing their resolve. Yet neither the Luna nor the king faltered. They had survived the night, and they would survive whatever came next. The wind carried a faint whisper, soft and eerie, and the Luna shivered. "The valley, it is not done with us," she murmured. "No," the king replied, his voice steady. "But neither are we. We endure." Together, the pups nestled closer, sensing the strength and protection radiating from both of them. The Luna's heart swelled with a mixture of exhaustion and pride. She had survived the night, kept her pups alive, and now, finally, her alpha king was by her side. Together they formed a circle of life and strength, defying the darkness that sought to claim them. But the valley had its secrets. The shadows lingered longer than they should have, twisting and turning with intent, and the wind carried whispers that promised more challenges ahead. Something ancient watched them, patient and hungry, waiting for a moment of weakness. The Luna glanced at the king, sensing the same awareness reflected in his eyes. Their hands brushed, fingers entwining instinctively. It was a silent agreement. They would face what came next together, as one, bound not just by duty or power, but by love forged in darkness and trial. And as the first sunlight touched the valley floor, painting the rocks in gold and silver, a single thought lingered in their minds. The night was over, but the battle had only begun. The forest beyond the valley was quiet, yet the quiet carried a weight heavier than the darkest night. The wind stirred through the trees, brushing against the leaves like ghostly fingers. Even in daylight, shadows lingered, twisting unnaturally around the roots and rocks. The 12 pups nestled between the Alpha King and his Luna, their small bodies trembling, aware of a danger neither fully understood. The Luna's heart pounded as she held the smallest pup against her chest, listening to the others whimper softly. She had survived the Cursed Valley's trials, yet a new unease settled over her. Something had followed them, an unseen presence that had lingered in the shadows, patient and watchful. She could feel it now, coiling around the trees, watching every step they took. The Alpha King moved ahead, his senses sharp, scanning the forest in all directions. His every muscle was tense, ready to strike at a moment's notice. The pups were safe in their arms, yet he could feel the weight of their fragility pressing on him. He had saved his Luna once, but he knew that the valley's magic was not so easily defeated. "Something is here," he murmured, his voice low, more to himself than to her. She nodded, her eyes scanning the shifting shadows. "I felt it too, since the valley. It is not finished with us." The king's hand brushed hers, a small gesture of reassurance but also a silent promise. "Then we face it together," he said, his voice steady, commanding. "We do not run, we do not falter." She nodded again, drawing strength from his presence. Together they moved cautiously, the pups nestled between them. Every step was careful, yet they could not pause forever. The forest seemed to close in around them, each tree a sentinel, each shadow a potential threat. Then, without warning, a dark shape moved ahead, a twisting shadow that shifted and flickered like smoke, yet it held a form. It was neither wolf nor human, but something older, something alive with hunger and malice. The pups whined, sensing danger, and the Luna tightened her grip on the smallest one, holding it close. The king stepped forward, placing himself between the Luna and the shadow. His eyes narrowed, and he let out a low growl that echoed through the trees. The shadow hesitated, then lunged, moving faster than either of them could track. He struck first, his hands glowing faintly with the power that marked him as Alpha. The shadow recoiled, then reformed, its shape shifting constantly. The Luna stepped beside him, drawing on her own quiet magic. She extended her hands, and a soft light emanated from her palms, weaving a protective barrier around the pups. Together, they faced the shadow, moving in silent coordination. The king attacked with strength and precision, the Luna weaving protective spells around them. For a moment, it seemed as though they could repel the darkness, their combined power forming a circle of light in the forest. But the shadow was relentless. It struck again and again, twisting, reforming, feeding on fear and uncertainty. The Luna felt her strength waning, exhaustion pressing down like a heavy stone. The pup stirred, sensing the tension, and a pang of fear stabbed her heart. She could not let them fall. She could not let the king fall. The king glanced at her, reading the exhaustion in her eyes. He stepped closer, placing a hand over hers. "Trust me," he said softly, yet firmly. "We are stronger together. Let me carry the weight of this fight." She took a deep breath, drawing in courage, and nodded. Together, they became one force. His strength and her magic intertwined, creating a shield that pushed back the shadow. They moved as a single entity, instincts and power in perfect balance, until finally, with a final, twisting strike, the shadow dissolved into nothingness, leaving only the whispering wind behind. The Luna sank to her knees, breathing heavily, the pups safe in their circle around her. The king knelt beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You were amazing," he said quietly, "stronger than I ever imagined." She looked at him, exhaustion and emotion mingling in her eyes. "I could not have done it without you," she whispered. You are always here, even when I am alone." He lifted her hand, pressing it to his chest. "And I will always be," he replied. "Through darkness, through trials, through everything. You are mine and I am yours, always." A silence fell over them, broken only by the soft whimpers of the pups. For the first time since the night began, they allowed themselves a moment of peace. The bond between them had deepened, forged in fire, shadow, and struggle. Yet even in that peace, the forest seemed to watch, patient and waiting, reminding them that their trials were far from over. The Luna looked down at the 12 pups, her heart swelling with both pride and exhaustion. She had kept them alive, had fought through fear and darkness, and had not faltered. And now, with the king by her side, she felt a new strength growing within her, a courage tempered by love, a power grounded in trust. The king's eyes met hers, dark and intense, filled with unspoken emotion. He leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You are remarkable," he said softly, "and I will not let anything harm you, not now, not ever." Her lips trembled in a small, tired smile. I know," she whispered, "and I trust you." A moment passed, heavy with unspoken words and feelings too deep for language. The pups stirred, sensing the calm between them, and a small warmth spread through the circle. It was fragile but real, a promise that they would survive, that they would endure, and that love had not been lost even in the darkness. But the forest was not done with them. From the edge of the clearing, a ripple of movement stirred the trees. The shadows that had fled returned, not as one, but as many, moving silently, circling, testing. The Alpha King rose, placing himself in front of the Luna, his body a living shield. "They are coming," he said quietly, eyes scanning the edges of the trees. "We cannot stay here, we must move." She nodded, gathering the pups close once more. "Lead the way," she said. "I will follow." Together they moved through the forest, cautious yet determined. Every step was measured, every glance alert, as the shadows watched and waited. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing moment, a tether of trust and love that could not be broken by fear or darkness. As they reached a small clearing near a stream, the Luna paused, listening. The air was heavy with the scent of magic, faint but unmistakable. "The valley's magic, it is still with us," she said, voice tight with concern. "It has marked us. We cannot rest yet." The king knelt beside her, his eyes meeting hers. "Then we face it together," he said. "Whatever comes, we endure, we fight, we protect our family." She nodded, drawing courage from his words. The 12 pups nestled close, their small bodies a reminder of the stakes, of the life they had fought to protect. The Luna felt a quiet pride and determination, knowing that she had survived the darkness once, and with the king by her side, they could face whatever else the world held. The wind stirred again, carrying whispers from the valley behind them, faint but chilling. The shadows were patient, waiting for a moment of weakness, watching for any falter in their strength. The Luna glanced at the king, and for the first time in days she allowed herself to smile, a small, tired smile, but one filled with trust and hope. He returned it, dark eyes filled with emotion, and together they moved forward, the 12 pups protected between them, their bond stronger than any shadow, any curse, or any danger that lingered. And though the forest watched and the wind whispered of trials yet to come, they knew one truth above all. They were together, and together they were unstoppable. The forest's edge stretched before them, sunlight spilling across the trees in a soft golden haze. It should have felt safe, peaceful even, after the trials they had faced in the cursed valley. But the air was heavy, charged with a presence that made the hair on the Luna's arms rise. She clutched a small pup close while the others nestled at her side, protected by the Alpha King's steady hands. "They're here," she whispered, eyes scanning the edge of the forest. The shadows moved subtly, almost as if the trees themselves were alive, bending toward them. The king's jaw tightened. He had faced countless battles, led his clan through war and chaos, yet there was something different about this, something older, deeper, a power that did not rely on brute strength alone. It was the valley's magic, lingering, waiting, and hungry for attention. He stepped closer to her, letting his presence shield her as always. "Whatever comes," he said, voice calm yet commanding, "we face it together. Nothing can separate us now." The Luna nodded, drawing courage from him. She had survived the cursed valley, protected the 12 pups through the night, and now she understood that true strength did not mean facing the world alone. It meant trusting the one who had always stood beside her. A sudden ripple of wind swept through the trees, cold and whispering. Shadows twisted, forming shapes more defined than before, dark figures that seemed to stretch and loom, yet shifted with unnatural speed. The Luna instinctively stepped closer to the king, her heart pounding. She could feel the valley's magic, subtle but persistent, trying to unsettle her, to test their bond. The Alpha King moved first, placing the pups safely behind a small outcropping of rocks. He drew in a deep breath, letting the quiet strength that defined him radiate outward. His eyes glimmered with authority and resolve, and even the shadows seemed to hesitate at his presence. "Stay close to me," he said to the Luna, his hand brushing hers briefly, a grounding touch that reminded her she was not alone. Together, they faced the advancing darkness. The shadow figures surged forward, yet as they drew near, the Luna raised her hands, letting her magic flow. A soft glow emanated from her palms, forming a barrier that pushed the shadows back. The king stepped beside her, letting his strength guide and enhance her power. The light between them grew, a circle of force that the shadows could not penetrate. Yet the valley's magic was cunning. The shadows twisted into new forms, lashing out with tendrils of darkness that sought to separate them, to prey on fear and hesitation. The Luna's breath came in shallow gasps, the weight of exhaustion pressing down. She had survived one night of trial, yet this new challenge tested not only her strength but her trust in the king. "Trust me," he said, voice low, steady, and unyielding. "Together we are stronger than this darkness." She nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest at his words. Trust was not easy. She had always relied on her own strength. But now, in the presence of this relentless threat, she understood the power of unity. She allowed herself to rely on him, to let their strengths combine. The shadows attacked again, but this time, The king and the Luna moved as one. Every motion, every strike of magic, every step forward was synchronized. His strength reinforced her magic, her power sharpened his strikes. The circle of light expanded, brighter and more commanding, until the shadows began to waver, uncertain against the combined force of their bond. The Luna felt her energy returning, fueled not only by magic but by love and determination. She looked at the king, and in that gaze they shared something unspoken. They were not just fighters, they were partners, bound by trials, love, and shared purpose. With a final, decisive surge of energy, the shadows recoiled and vanished, dissolving into the air like mist. The valley's magic, for all its persistence, had been overcome, not by power alone but by trust, unity, and love. The forest fell silent. The only sound was the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze and the tiny whimpers of the 12 pups, now safe and unharmed. The Luna sank to her knees, exhaustion overwhelming her, yet a deep relief settled over her. The Alpha King knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You were incredible," he said softly, his eyes reflecting pride and something deeper, more intimate, "stronger than I ever imagined." She lifted her gaze to meet his, exhaustion and emotion mingling in her eyes. I could not have done it without you," she whispered. You are always here, even when I am alone." His fingers brushed a strand of her hair from her face. "And I will always be," he said quietly. "Through darkness, through trials, through everything. You and these pups are my family, and I will protect you all no matter what comes." The Luna's heart swelled. She had faced fear, darkness, and exhaustion, yet now, in the king's presence, she felt a new strength rising within her. She realized that survival was not just about enduring. It was about connection, love, and the courage to trust another completely. The 12 pups stirred, sensing the calm between their parents. They nestled closer to the Luna, their tiny forms warm and alive, a living reminder of what had been protected and fought for. The Luna smiled faintly, tears threatening her eyes. She had endured the valley's trials, and now, standing with the Alpha King, she knew they had achieved something greater. Redemption, not only for survival but for the bond that tied them together. The king stood, holding out a hand to help her to her feet. "We have survived the night," he said, voice strong yet tender, "and now we move forward together, as one." She took his hand, allowing him to lift her gently. The sunlight glinted on his dark hair, his eyes filled with emotion, and she felt a warmth and certainty she had never known before. They were no longer just Alpha and Luna. They were partners, equals in strength and love, their bond forged in darkness and trial, now tempered in light. The forest around them seemed to breathe a quiet sigh of relief. The shadows had been vanquished, yet the valley's whisper remained faint, a reminder that life carried challenges and strength must always be nurtured. But the Luna no longer feared it alone. She had the king by her side, their connection unbreakable. As they walked together, carrying the 12 pups through the quiet forest, the Luna spoke softly, almost to herself. "I thought I had to do everything alone, but I was wrong. Together, we are stronger than anything the world can send." The king smiled, leaning closer, his voice a soft murmur. "Always remember that, together we endure, together we thrive, and together we love." Her heart swelled at his words. She had faced the darkest night, survived the cursed valley, protected her children, and now she stood with her mate, stronger, braver, and more certain of her place in the world. She was not just the Luna, she was a mother, a protector, a partner, and she was loved in return. The 12 pups yipped softly, their small, trusting voices echoing through the trees. The king and Luna laughed quietly, relief and joy mingling in their voices. The forest, once filled with shadows and whispers, now seemed to embrace them, the sunlight warming their path forward. And yet, as they moved toward the safety of their kingdom, the wind carried a faint, almost imperceptible whisper, soft, distant, but unmistakably alive. The valley's magic had left a mark, subtle but persistent, a reminder that life's trials were never truly over. But for now, the Alpha King and his Luna had triumphed. They reached the edge of the forest, stepping into open fields bathed in sunlight. The 12 pups scampered happily ahead, their tiny paws leaving prints in the soft grass. The Luna watched them, her heart full, and the king drew her close, his arm wrapping around her shoulders. "You are mine," he whispered, voice low, steady, and full of certainty. "And you are mine," she replied, her voice soft, yet unwavering. For the first time in many nights they allowed themselves a full moment of peace. The darkness had tested them, the valley had tried to claim them, and they had endured. Not through power alone, not through magic alone, but through trust, love, and the bond that neither shadow nor curse could break. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the fields and trees, the Alpha King and his Luna walked forward, 12 pups at their side, hearts entwined, ready to face the future together. And in that light, the world seemed full of promise, hope, and the quiet certainty that together, they could overcome anything.